Now is Rina Shah, Republican political strategist and commentator, former RNC delegate and founder of Relax Strategies, and my main man, Danny Savalas, criminal defense attorney and MSNBC legal analyst. Danny, I get to talk to a lawyer and take my glasses off. First block in the show. Thanks for being here. You know, he's going to be back in, Donald Trump is going to be back in court this Thursday, and there's the hush money case that's looming. And has the landscape, given everything that we've seen so far, has that changed for you in terms of what you think the most important case that he's facing is?
Well, the two biggest questions are, of course, timeline, and then also I think a separate question is what case is the biggest threat? And I have long said that the New York State criminal case, not impressed. It's based on a novel theory of the law, a novel application of the law. I think two things could happen. The best thing that could happen for Trump is that case would go to trial right away, and he would either win an acquittal or possibly even get it dismissed. That case, I think, has a low likelihood of being successful against Donald Trump. Now, if you're just playing the odds, I've also long said that any federal case has a better than 90% chance of resulting in a conviction. So you take the two federal cases against Donald Trump, and they have a strong likelihood of resulting in a conviction. And then Georgia, a couple of months ago, I might have said that posed a real threat to Trump. Now, in light of this latest motion to disqualify the Fulton County DA and dismiss the indictment, I no longer think that case is as strong as it used to be. That case is faltering. It may be on the ropes.
But Rina, my friend, I've been having this conversation about Donald Trump, the defendant, and Donald Trump, the candidate, sort of being one and the same at this point. As we continue to see these legal entanglements sort of heat up and Donald Trump's defense, both publicly and within court, basically being that he's persecuted, what do you make of that NBC poll that I just talked about, where it says that there is a sector of folks who essentially seem like they're not buying it, and if he is convicted, that could sway their vote?
So I'll say this, because we're looking at the court of public opinion here, right? Not a court of law. And Donald Trump gets that. And that's why with many Republicans who remain lukewarm about him after 2020, he tends to pull them back in every now and then on not the merits, of course, of any of these cases. When we're looking at 90-some indictments, people say, well, don't you think it's sort of unfair that all these have sort of come at him now when he's announced his candidacy? He seems to be polling so well. And I say we've got to be willing to split hairs here. We've got to be willing to understand that the mechanics of this race are so different because of how, frankly, how the RNC works. And we saw it just in Nevada this past week. You've got a party infrastructure that is not completely fair. It is remade in the image of Trump. It is run by Trump loyalists, some of who are under federal indictment, I must add. So when you're dealing with I would say the facts being so skewed towards non-reality almost, then you're operating under a different set of circumstances. Nikki Haley exists for this very reason. It is a race that is bigger than Nikki Haley when she's still in it, because she represents that opportunity for the Republican Party, for the people who are lukewarm about Trump to say, we are finally done with Trumpism. That's conventional wisdom, Charles. But again, political theater makes it so these members of Congress come every day and they try to tell you, just like Elise Stefanik this past week did, that laws are not laws and that they can be turned at any point. And that, I would submit to you, my friend, is the most tough and difficult factor for Republicans to overcome in this primary.
Rina, you just mentioned the RNC, and it prompted a follow-up that I have for you. Is Nikki Haley the plan B? Is she the contingency plan? Does the RNC have any contingency plan for a Donald Trump conviction and what that could mean for his candidacy?
I have spent some time with RNC Chair McDaniel, who is not yet done, but has submitted her plans to resign after the primary in South Carolina at the end of the month. And so, look, there's a lot of bad blood all throughout the party. With McDaniel leaving the post of chair, you can almost expect that it would be an incredible Trump loyalist, somebody who's willing to change things in such a way that they cannot be changed back very easily within a few years. McDaniel, no matter what she was publicly publicly. Privately, she was still pretty moderate for the most part. And I would just say for Nikki Haley, of course, she's a plan B right now. But there will be a lot of obituaries written after the 24th. And that is the hardest part for anybody within this party right now to try to push back on. So you've got to hope that the turnout is what it is. Because, again, the RNC has always said it's a turnout operation. It's not one in which it tells the candidates what to do, nor does it push one candidate forward before another. But again, you've heard a lot of talk out of both sides of the mouth for a lot of the RNC leadership over 8 years now.
Danny, I want to switch gears a little bit. Last night, we had Donald Trump's defense team in Mar-a-Lago file a very, very late night document basically saying, look, after the special counsel's report, Biden isn't charged with respect to his documents and having documents he wasn't supposed to have. So we should dismiss this case because Donald Trump shouldn't have been charged. And I know a lot of people are saying, here we go again. Donald Trump's trying to delay. But I want you to talk as a defense attorney in terms of the different vehicles and political legal maneuvers that people can take in order to try and fight for their client, and how normal or abnormal, for that matter, something like this is.
The argument of selective prosecution is often made. You're basically saying, hey, what about that guy?
Right.
That guy did the same thing and you're not prosecuting him. I've made it. It works almost 0.0% of the time. I'm not even aware of an instance in which it has worked. But we make that argument knowing that we just need to make a record as defense attorneys, and maybe you get lucky on appeal. To use an analogy, it's like saying no whammies, stop on that great show, Press Your Luck.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for that callback. These kids out there don't appreciate what good game shows were back in the 80s.
Leave it for the Googles.
Right, exactly. So I think in this case, you've got a situation where the Trump defense team is trying anything they can. That kind of selective prosecution argument is really not likely to work. But, I mean, they will try to incorporate whatever they can from the special counsel's report, which, of course, is not precedential. It's just a rare report. We don't get special counsels very often, and we get these public reports even rarer still. But I find them fascinating because they give us, especially defense attorneys, and almost never opportunity for an access to the inner workings, the thought process of a federal prosecutor in deciding whether or not to bring a prosecution, considering all the factors. And I have to say, I was a little buoyed by the idea that a prosecutor would go beyond just thinking in the Biden case, hey, I can get an indictment, I can get probable cause, but I don't think I could get to beyond reasonable doubt. And they didn't necessarily say that part about getting an indictment, but they considered whether or not Biden would be a convincing witness and whether or not his possession of the documents was inadvertent. So I found that very interesting, just pivoting briefly onto the Her report.
I've got a quick question for you and one more for Rina. On Thursday, when we had these Supreme Court arguments, one thing that I did not hear was any sort of argument about whether Trump had actually participated in an insurrection. Do you read anything from that? And if so, what?
Because strangely enough, whether or not Trump factually participated in an insurrection may be the legally least insignificant issue in an entire panoply of incredibly complex issues that, I mean, even listening to the argument, I think many folks, even folks like me who follow it, it was tough to keep up because they speak in that kind of legal shorthand referencing cases that really, you have to be really deep in the case to follow. But the reason the insurrection factual issue is less important is because, for example, another court in another state or another Secretary of State could make a different factual conclusion. In this case, in the Colorado court, they used an expert who interpreted meanings of words in terms of saying that Donald Trump's words incited. Right, exactly. So another court might do it differently. So that, for the Trump team, isn't necessarily a win. The Trump team needs a global victory. That's why they focused on things like the definition of an officer. If the Supreme Court goes their way on the issue of officer, that is a global remedy. That could be applied in every state, whether a Secretary of State is making the decision or a court is making the decision. But I think the reason you didn't see a factual focus on whether or not Donald Trump committed insurrection is because, as crazy as this sounds, with all the other constitutional legal issues before the court, that may be really comparatively a minor one.
I'm glad you said that, but I have to leave Rina with the last word. I have a very important question for you tonight. Who do you have, Taylor Swift or Usher?
Do I really have to make the choice? I'm a gal of the 90s. Usher, I've got it bad.
Much appreciated. Let it burn. Rina Shah and Danny Savalas, thank you both for getting us started on a Sunday morning. Coming up,